Hi, everybody. My name is Roberta, and I'm going to talk about a media article that I found. It was by Pacific Oaks. It's a college in Pasadena, and the article was called Gen Z's Progressive Stance on Therapy and Mental Health. So, what it was basically stating was how there's like a rapid growth of therapy needed for Gen Z, and um, it was to help increase like the MFT program. So, who conducted the original research was American Psychological Association, or APA. And then within that original research, it was part of the APA's annual Stress in America survey series. So the aim or the questions was to compare Gen Z's mental health and stress experiences to older generations. So yeah, it was comparing the need of Gen Z compared to older ones and how they're able to or willingly to seek therapy services or treatment. So findings are reported by using percentages, direct comparisons across generations. Self-reported data are implied through standardized surveys, and then results are presented using descriptive statistics. So the sample is Generation Z, which ages or age range goes through 15 to 21 years old. Within that sample, it was 3,458 adults, 300 adolescents ages from 15 to 17. And then the participants represented a national US sample. And then methodology, that's a tricky word, part of the annual Stress in America survey series. It was conducted as an online survey format, and then it was conducted from July through August 2018. The measures were self-rated mental health status, and the sources of stress included like new situations, finances, discrimination, housing, and etc. So we'll see it on the graph on the side. And then conclusions is Gen Z reports higher stress and poorer mental health than older generations. And Gen Z is more likely to seek therapy or mental health treatment. So the research claims that Gen Z reports higher levels of stress and poor self-rated mental health than older generations and is more likely to seek professional mental health treatment. Whether the media captured the claim correctly, it did, but it was very broad. So yes, Pacific Oaks captured the claim, but in a simplified way. Pacific Oaks accurately reflected the key points by stating Gen Z is more open to therapy and mental health care. Generation Z experiences mental health crisis related to anxiety, depression, and stress. In addition, there is an increase in demand for mental health professionals due to Gen Z's needs. However, Pacific Oaks broadens the findings of mental health crisis, and the media article interprets and applies the findings for educational and professional purposes, which broadens the original claim. I can't necessarily zoom, but these are the results. So on the left, it shows each generation and the mental health needs. So it goes from Gen Z, I can't say the word millennials. I can't say the word, sorry. And then Gen Xers, boomers, and older adults. And then on the right, it shows the news events stressing Gen Z. So it goes mass shootings, rise in suicide rates, climate change and global warming, separation and deportation of immigrant and migrant families, and widespread sexual harassment and assault reports. The dark purple is Gen Z, and then the light purple is adults overall. And the implications of the findings imply a growing need for accessible mental health interventions and treatment for Gen Z.
I have a question, not necessarily on the articles that you found, but more so of um, if what you think or your perception is, kind of goes along those lines where, we hear it from multi-generationals that whether it's the access, right, of mental health services or, the cultural beliefs to where, the older people, millennials, boomers, they, kind of have a different lifestyle that they were accustomed to, right? Where they might not necessarily talk about their feelings or the need for mental health. Did you find while reading that that was kind of the case because Gen Zs are more aware of, the mental health crisis and other resources that are available? And I feel like it, since a young age, they're kind of like being told just because of whether it's bullying or different, especially that age range that you found, right? There's a lot of hormonal changes that happen. So there kind of is more, talked about, I guess.
Yeah, I noticed too that there was a lot more awareness in Gen Z compared to like the older generations. And also too in like not necessarily this one, but I know in other findings and another thing that I wanted to consider was like the cultural considerations regarding it. But exactly how you said the access to it. So it like roughly touched on it, not fully. But that was another thing that I was thinking of when doing this was like what are the cultural considerations? Even on the media article, that was something that it wasn't stating like whatsoever. It was very broad on it was just more emphasizing that Gen Z needs it compared to exactly that, the cultural considerations, and then even the awareness of it. And also too, like that wasn't really talked about compared to now that, everybody I read another one that says something like, oh, it's like a badge of honor. And I think it was the APA one that people view it as that, like going to therapy is like a badge of honor, compared to in the past, it wasn't necessarily like that. And if anything, was more frowned upon.
Hi, my name is Kimberly, and I did a study, but I don't know who actually did it because it says it was approved by Harvard's Institution Review Board, but then also in the media article, it said it was done by some Brown University, so there is mixed review. The original research was published by JAMA articles. So they published it. It was 13 different researchers, and the title was conducted a study called the use of generative AI for mental health advice among US adolescents and young adults. The sample size was English speakers ages 12 to 21 with internet access. The methodology was a cross-sectional national representative survey was conducted. The data was collected between February and March 2025. There were 1,058 participants. The survey specified if the respondents sought out advice or help from AI when they felt a certain emotion, such as sad, anger, or anxiety. The conclusion found that the 13.1% of adolescents and young adults reported using AI for mental health advice when they felt a certain emotion, and 22.2% of young adults ages 18 to 21 also found the same or reported the same as well. The research claimed that more adolescents and young adults in the United States are seeking mental health advice from AI chatbots, and participants are seeking advice from AI chatbots because many of them found the advice somewhat or very helpful. Okay, did the media capture the claim? Yes, the media did capture the claim. There are a lot of young adults seeking helpful advice from AI bots, but it was not specific on any type of mental health issues or advice that was sought. Methodological details, study limitations, and key findings from original research were not addressed in the media coverage. The media included key statistics from the study, but it did not discuss the study limitations or context. The media also noted that AI companies are implementing safety measures in response to concerns that some advice from chatbots could potentially be harmful to young users. And then I did find a figure in the original research. It's really small, but the first one is about who participated. The dark is the female, and then the light orange is male. And then the left side shows like the respondent percentages. And then in the middle, it talks about how often they seeked out advice. And then the last one is how helpful they found the AI chatbots to be. So some additional useful context, this research article focuses on mental health advice during emotional distress and not formal treatment. AI chatbots do not equate to psychotherapy. AI advice may target coping strategies, reassurance, or normalization rather than diagnosis or evidence-based interventions. Implications. With advancements in technology, more people are turning to AI for helpful advice. This is not limited to anything. This can be harmful for people that are seeking advice on their physical and mental health. Seeking professional help is the most ideal choice because there is no risk that people will receive the wrong information that can cause further harm. This is a code, it is not a person, and that can really affect a fragile person's well-being.
I had a question just based on what you've read and from what your article was. Do you think that people are turning to AI just because of like lack of access to actual therapists, or like they can't afford it, or like just other barriers to access?
The media article actually stated that no, not the media article, the original research stated that more people are turning to AI because it's more accessible and it's more financially accessible as well because it doesn't cost any
Mhm.
money. And people are stating that, well, they need help. You have to like wait a certain time period to see a therapist. So that's why they're turning to AI bots just to get
Oh,
quick
okay.
advice.
Like the instant
Mhm.
advice.
And
Okay.
then plus with our age groups, it's usually young kids and adults and they don't want to tell their parents. And usually you need parental advice
Mm,
to seek therapy, so they kind of do on the down low.
okay.
I have a question. Did it ever give like any like statistics or any like findings regarding like how it is harmful, like the percentages of that whatsoever?
Not really, because it didn't really go into like that kind of research. It only looked at like the emotions because it didn't go into like, oh, do you have suffer from a certain diagnosis? They didn't ask any of those questions because it could be harmful. So they only looked at just emotions. So that's what they said with the further study that they would have to do more research, but they also can't because it's an invasion of HIPAA.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Hi, my name is Christia, and today I will be summarizing two pieces that explore how schools are supporting anxious students and the implications of these supports for any anxiety development and treatment at school. So the first one was the media article by Lovett and Jordan 2025, and this was from Teachers College. So the article basically was about how schools often accommodate anxiety by removing stressors, for example, like not having students do presentations. It reinforces avoidance, which can actually worsen anxiety, and exposure to manageable stress builds confidence and reduces anxiety. And the article they quoted was by Phillips et al. 2022, which talks about how formal school support plans for anxious youth include various accommodations like IEP plans or 504s. Some supports promote like approach while others promote avoidance, and the type varies depending on the student's diagnosis or anxiety or depression that they may be experiencing. The article basically highlighted the need to assess the quality of the school supports that are provided for each student. As far as the implications, it was basically that schools need to shift from avoidance accommodations to supports aligned with evidence-based practice to expose them when appropriate to stressors at school. The evaluation of support should be considered for every outcome, not just for academic performance, but also just for social outcomes as well. And there should be collaborative planning between educators, clinicians, and caregivers to better support anxious youth. For the sample, they did sample 76 youth age 7 to 17, and 47.4% of them were female, and 76.3 were white non-Hispanics. The questionnaire was basically on a scale of 0, which meant not at all, to 8, very much, of how much the support they were receiving from the school would promote or alleviate the anxiety in the school setting. So as far as did the media capture the claim, the media piece only summarized like the broad conclusions without explaining how those conclusions were reached. As a result, I felt like the readers are left with an incomplete picture of the nuance and rigor of the study design. The mass media article captured the essence of the findings, but I felt it lacked several important details because it was kind of oversimplified, which I understand in a media article, they can't get to specifics like the research articles, but it just kind of, I felt like it touched the surface of that. The original authors of the research, I did feel that they did include some demographic data, but it wasn't deeply analyzed in terms of like diversity factors between the students. For the implications, I feel like more research is warranted, particularly those in observational research in schools. The articles kind of were just basically having like the school setting of it. And also they took youth that were referred. So I feel like if they ran more research on kids that may not necessarily have a specific diagnosis or that they weren't needing this for an IEP plan or a 504 plan, I feel like we would be able to see or have a sample size that was bigger and also included other populations, like in terms of diversity. So I feel like it did bring up a good point as far as collaboration that needs to happen between parents and teachers or counselors to make sure that they're both like on the same page. As far as for any treatment seeking youth, I feel like this was good, right? Like, but again, it's just based on what support systems are required to fill kind of this quota that they have when it comes to these programs that need guidance for all the kids.
I found it interesting that they don't want to do speeches, like stand up in front of the classroom to do projects and stuff, public speaking. Because I remember when I was in elementary school, they started us out really young. Every project that we had to talk to the class about it, present to the class. And like as you start at first grade and work your way all the way up to 6th grade, you're already like a pro. You're not like anxious. So that's kind of weird that they just want to take it out all together instead of like helping the child build up their confidence and ease their anxiety. What do you think about that?
I found it really interested during COVID, right? Because I feel that all of us, regardless of how communicative we are, like we still fear public speaking, right? Like I can talk for days, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like the most comfortable speaking, right, to a panel or to an audience. And I think that when right after COVID, there was a lot of the high school kids that were oncoming to, back when we started going back, I was in undergrad at that time. It was my last semester. And when we had to do presentations, when we went back to in person, there was a few kids that could not get through presentations. Like one literally had like to stop and had a kind of like a panic attack because her poor thing, her last 2 years of high school were all online, right? So it wasn't like she had that, kind of experience. So I feel like we're doing a disservice, honestly, because you may still be afraid to talk in front of a group or like we're doing now, but like you still have to, like we do it for work, we do it for in other aspects of our lives.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia. So for my article, its title was Harvard researchers say eating this fruit every day can lower your depression risk. So the media article did capture that it was Harvard researchers that did it. It just didn't capture exactly who was in it. It was conducted by multiple researchers, but the article only said there was two, which was Andrew Chan and Raj Mehta for the article. So that already kind of showed that I don't think they did their due diligence in showing fully who exactly everyone was in the research. But the main goal of the article and the questions that it was meant to ask was to understand the role of the gut microbiome in modulating the association between citrus intake and depression. So the sample size used in the research was from a nurses' health study in 1989. Uh, the original amount of participants in the study were 116,429 female registered nurses who were middle aged. Then they took that study and narrowed down the participants to women without depression as their baseline, and also women who had depression and reported it. And from that pool, it was 32,427 middle-aged women. And then even then from that research study, they did a smaller sub-study called the Mind-Body sub-study from 2013 to 2014. And this sub-study was a lot smaller. It was a smaller group of women, 207 that were aged 55 to 65. And this one was the main one that was used to get the gut microbiome information. So they sampled stool and also fasting blood samples to get the information about the gut microbiome. The main methodology that they used for this study was basically getting questionnaires about their lifestyle, their food intake, and then for that sub-study, the blood and stool samples. The main conclusion for the study just suggests that citrus fruit can help lower depression risk through beneficial gut bacteria, but it does say that there does need to be further studies to see how how that's fully linked, because they can't just say that based on their observations that is the main reason that there is a lower depression risk that was found. So as far as if the media piece captured this information, I don't think they did. I think they really oversimplified it. They mainly, the main thing of the article that I read was basically saying that eat citrus fruit and that will lower your depression and prevent depression. They didn't mention anything about the diversity of the population, which was basically just women, middle-aged women. So we don't know if that translates to other population groups. So that wasn't acknowledged in the media article. Um, I personally don't think the media article did that good of a job as far as like showing all that information. And then as far as like the implications of the study, it just mostly shows that more research needs to be done in this and that there could be beneficial benefits to like diet change, which could include like eating more citrus to help lower depression risk. I did have a figure that was a little bit more like summarize the study a bit more. That is right here if you guys just want to take a look at it.
I'd be curious to see if they include it, right, more diversity in terms of gender, right? Like, would it impact differently for men versus women? And then
Mhm.
also, like, I don't think they address like any potential like autoimmune conditions, right? Or like people that can't necessarily eat a lot of citrus, right?
Mhm.
Because of like gut issues. So that'd be kind of curious because like what if somebody can't, like has like acid reflux, right? You or can't have a lot of like that, sour stuff, I would think, in your esophagus or your stomach. So
Yeah, that's the part that I found interesting, that the population that they used was so concentrated on just like female nurses and not really any other population. I mean, they did do a validation study that was with men, and it kind of helped support what they found. But I still think that they needed to increase their population size and like diversity, like just different groups in general and ages. Because like I wonder if like how kids are affected or people in their 20s. Like so yeah, I was really curious about that too.